This is Nathan LeClaire, independent coder and author, and you're listening to Coffee Moguls, the podcast interviewing internet entrepreneurs and icons who are tackling unconventional problems and getting unconventional results. On Coffee Moguls, we do deep dives so you can unpack what's behind their success, so you can get the edge you need in your career and in your business. Most of our guests and audience members love caffeine, so brew up a cup and settle in. Let's drink some coffee, let's pump some iron. Let's start a company. It's Coffee Moguls. It's Coffee Moguls. But first, the disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not financial advice. The opinions are personal and not professional advice. Consult with a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. Today, I'm very excited to welcome to the show Zack Burt, software development engineer at Amazon and crypto intellectual. How's it going, Zack?
I'm pleased to be here, Nathan. Thank you for the invitation. I was flattered to receive it, and I've been enjoying our interactions on the internet.
Exactly. I'm really looking forward to it. Before we dive in on the nerd stuff, though, since it is Coffee Moguls, I got to know, did you get your coffee in today?
I not only got my coffee in today, but I was dealing with this really nasty bug at work. There's like a kind of a WTF comment in the code base since 2017. So not only did I have my coffee, but I had my ginseng and guarana drink, and I had my other intense mate drink. So I am fully caffeinated, and I'm still buzzing.
There we go. Perfect setup to come on to Coffee Moguls.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So tell me a little bit about your background. You were mentioning that your aunt got you started programming and you started making money online from an early age.
It was like a mix of honest work and just like good old fashioned. Gosh, I don't know how much I want to say here, but I'll say this: I got involved with spam at kind of a young age. I was like really into AOL Instant Messenger, and like I don't know. I think you're about my age, right? Like early 30s ish, mid 30s, something like that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
AIM was kind of the thing, but I got really into it, like at the protocol level, and I was building spam bots for affiliate marketing clients.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, but I just loved it, and it was such a moral victory for me that I could capitalize on my like computer nerd stuff and turn it into like a way to make money in the world. And that was just like an aha moment for me when I started doing this computer work professionally. I was just very passionate about it, and I got involved with an entrepreneur who mentored me a bit, and then he's kind of like 200 IQ points ahead of me, so he's gone on to do amazing things. But I was inspired by him to start building apps. I built one app when I was in school that went viral and got acquired, and I thought I was hot stuff for a minute. And then I started building apps for other people and started down the Tim Ferriss path of like the 4-hour work week. And I had this business called Awesomeness Reminders for a while, or for $40 a month, a real person would call you every day and tell you you are awesome. And that was kind of a thing. And I for a bit, and then that kind of petered out, and I just got a job with a startup just doing actual software engineering, and I sort of made the leap from amateur developer to professional developer. Started learning a lot. I was kind of filled with ego and hubris, fueled by my early luck, which is kind of a mix between beginner's luck and born on first, think I had a single type of deal. But fueled by that sort of combination, persisted with the entrepreneurial route. I did a lot of consulting, eventually writing a book on consulting. I invested in Bitcoin relatively early. We can talk about that later. I had an idea for a hedge fund based on insider trading. I was convinced that by reading the SEC filings for insider transactions, I could gain an edge in the market. I became obsessed with this idea. I did tons of research. I learned everything I could about hedge funds. I went to so many conferences. Well, not that many, but like a lot. I networked my pants off. I got an angel investor to put some money to have me work on it for a bit. That I'm kind of overselling my accomplishment there, because I had an old contact help me with that, and it was really more like a 0% interest loan than a true angel investment. And anyway, that money dried up, and then I went to work for another startup run by some super angels, and I just worked really, really hard. I was like in my late 20s, and I had a ton of motivation and work ethic, and I just wanted to prove myself so bad. And I would show up to the office at 7 a.m. and, be online until, stereotypical long hours. And while the startup didn't work out, they learned about my hedge fund idea and actually gave me some money to manage for them. And that was kind of like one of my breaks. And then my whole hypothesis and all my back tests, when the rubber met the road, I feel like there's like the little bit of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in the financial markets, in that by like actually investing, you're sending a signal that permanently alters the system. And that's sort of what fuels my whole, like, maybe investing is social signaling type of crazy theory. But yeah. So, and apologies if the term crazy is offensive. I mean, how about wackadoo? So ultimately, I kept finding myself going back to consulting, and I made a friend on Reddit, and we actually wrote a book on consulting together. He founded an e-commerce company called Smile.io. They're up in Canada in Waterloo, and they do e-commerce loyalty. It's like a very obscure $100 million company up in Canada. So, but he and I wrote a book together on consulting. I created a community for consultants for a while and ran a consulting business and learned about that. And I failed to mark up my subcontractors enough. If I can just like share one lesson with anyone who's listening who might be interested in this, if you're hiring subcontractors, you might feel dirty, but if you're not marking their rates up by at least 100%, it's just bad business, and it's not sustainable. So I took a very low markup, and it was just a bad business practice. I felt like guilty. I wanted about it, but it was just not sustainable. And I don't want to talk too much about my personal life, but I became a dad, and I had bills to pay, and I needed to get a regular income going. So I went back into the work market, and I found myself at Amazon, and I'm super happy to be here at Amazon, though I'm really not speaking on behalf of the company. I'm speaking as an individual, a standard meaningless disclaimer. And yeah, I'm into crypto. I'm into all sorts of stuff. I try to stay curious and follow my passions. Yep.
Your hedge fund idea about tracking insider buys and sells is interesting. There's this website I've been looking at, Unusual Whales, and that's one of the things that they do. So they actually compile all these lists of like what are all the senators in the US buying and selling and that kind of thing, right? Like, oh, like these people have this amazing ability to time the market somehow. And so that's one of the things that Unusual Whales tracks. So that's interesting. Some validation, I think, for your hypothesis there.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's this investment research company called Zacks, and I know Zach, but Zacks is pretty well known, and they had published this handbook of market anomalies, or like ways that Jensen's alpha is generated. And they list insider transactions as one of them, but I wasn't able to pull it off in practice. But I kind of have like a broken heart over that area, and I'm like kind of I don't know how I feel about retreading that. I'm happy to talk about like my learning experience, but insofar as like me venturing back into that financial sphere as a practitioner, I think I have too much scar tissue. Whereas with crypto, I've been burnt. I've let my hand linger on the stove. Yes, but I've also been warmed up a little bit, just enough to keep me going. So
just enough optimism left in the tank to just keep staying by the stove, cooking some new dishes up.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, this is like kind of an interesting story that we were talking about before. I think it'd be pretty fascinating to share with the listeners that you. I don't know if all the listeners know this, but there was this very famous exchange back in the day for Bitcoin. It was called Mt. Gox, and they kind of infamously either got hacked or ran away with all the Bitcoins. Kind of depends on your perspective, I think. But you were part of that. So tell us a little bit about this kind of early days of Wild West Bitcoin and crypto.
Yeah, I guess as someone who played a lot of Magic the Gathering as a child, buying Bitcoin on a website that was formerly Magic the Gathering online exchange didn't strike me as a bad idea, but in hindsight, it clearly was. I got a substantial Bitcoin position early on, and one day I just got a phone call from one of my buddies in the early crypto space, and he just called me and Zach, Mt. Gox, everyone's trying to pull their money out. I'm like, what? And it's a blessing and a curse because on the one hand, it's like, fine, what is it, 7 years later, 8 years later, we're going to see some light at the end of the tunnel. There's been a civil rehabilitation suit in Japan. This big investment bank, Fortress Investment Group, they're publicly traded, got involved. They started buying up claims for 85 cents on the dollar, and it's a blessing in disguise. That's what I tell myself, because even though my position is worth 17% approximately of what I had in Bitcoin there, I didn't sell, as you put, forced diamond hands.
That's right. You're like way down in Bitcoin terms. Like you have 17% of the original amount of Bitcoin that you had, but you were just completely locked in and you couldn't do anything with that Bitcoin because of all the stuff that happened. And so you couldn't sell. And so now you kind of made money off of that 17% because it accumulated in price so much.
Yeah, that's been a game changer for me financially. I definitely lucked out there, and kind of like part of me wishes sometimes that I could just go into like, I don't know, like, not a coma, but like go to sleep for like 5 years and just wake up and like let my positions ride. And I just think in 5 years we're going to be very, very appreciative that we got in to
Just
the
not
crypto.
worry about that day in and day out, numbers flashing in your face, like
Oh,
emotions running high.
it stresses me out, man. I used to have a crypto ticker installed on my, menu bar, and I was tracking the price of my various positions, and I was like going on this emotional roller coaster that I've like tried so hard to get myself to a more centered place that I just can't do it to myself. I can't put myself and everyone in my life through that. It's so intense. And I'm not one of those people who's making money on the intense day-to-day volatility.
Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of stresses you out. I mean, I think that's a big reason why, say, buying and holding an index fund or investing in a home works really well for people, because you just kind of do it and you don't look at it and you don't have that number flashing in your face like, oh, your house just went down 50 grand in value. You just lost 50 grand.
Yeah. 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 There are some tax complications that I've kind of been putting off that I'm going to start needing to look into. But yeah, I feel okay about it all for now. I'm excited about NFTs right now. I feel like that's my like latest like thing I got lucky on. And there's a little bit of like, we were talking about the emotional roller coaster and like staying by the stove and keeping warm and not getting burnt, right? And I have this background in social psychology, and one of the most addicting things is variable interval reinforcement. So that is happening a lot in crypto, like everywhere you look, whether it's with these NFTs where you could get lucky and mint a valuable one, or just like, your one random coin ends up mooning and like you get rich for a day, or uh I think there's actually a lot of illegal activity with these NFTs also. A lot of them are functioning like unlicensed raffles for profit. But that's like a separate conversation. We don't need to go into my jealous or envious squawking
Yeah, well,
But
there certainly is a seedy underbelly in the crypto space. If you're going to invent a money launderer's paradise, that's pretty much what it looks like. So I think you do have to kind of take some of the rough with the smooth there. You have to be realistic that, yes, there are shady things happening in here too. I actually want to press pause really quick. And so, a couple things for the listeners. I think that you mentioned this intermittent reinforcement. And I think, if I'm correct, this is basically the idea that if you sometimes get a reward and sometimes you get nothing, you're going to be that much more likely to just keep coming back to that activity, right? Like the rats that they introduce, like they push a lever, and if you get a snack all of the time, you don't push that lever that often. But if you get it some of the time, they go crazy. They're just these like gambler rats that are just pushing the lever again and again. And I think that's what you're talking about, right?
I am that gambler rat. B.F. Skinner was one of the scientists who pioneered the statistical bits of that. But yep, you nailed it concisely. So
Right. And so NFTs, I think, just as a quick introduction for anyone who isn't familiar, are that stands for non-fungible token. But basically the main use case so far seems to be this sort of digital art piece, right? Where you have this almost like a certificate of ownership on the blockchain. Like you have some unique piece of art, and then what certifies you as the unique owner is that you have basically like a certificate on the blockchain.
that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to print a T-shirt with one of my art pieces recently, and they actually Custom Ink wrote me back and said, "Actually, you can't print this because it's copyright." And I'm actually like, "Well, I own the copyright. Here's a screenshot of my MetaMask wallet." They're like, "All right, thank you very much."
That's wild.
It it is wild. I don't know, man. It's very interesting. We see there's like a couple ways to look at it, right? One is that it's just like, what's it called? Pump and dump. Another way to look at it is that it's a way to get people interested in art and actually like making art accessible and affordable and art ownership.
Or in crypto, right? If you're an artistic person that otherwise would have no, me and you are nerds. So we're interested in, Solana's written in Rust or whatever nerdy aspect. But if you're artistic, if you're a digital artist, I mean, why would you be interested in crypto necessarily?
And there's something special that's happening when you blend the art and the math and the computer science and the finance and the money. And when you put those two together, you sort of like create like this sort of social vortex. I think it's kind of interesting how that's happening.
Yeah, well, and one thing that I do find very fascinating is you mentioned, for instance, that you just showed your certificate of ownership, if you will, to prove that you're the holder of the copyright on this piece of art, on this NFT. And another guest that I had on the podcast, James Turnbull, who works at Sotheby's, told me that one of their biggest problems, or one of the things that they're the most concerned about, is that proof of provenance, right? Just like kind of that log of the chain of all the different people who owned that piece of art and proving its authenticity. And with an NFT, you basically have that built in.
That part is exciting. I will say that I am super passionate about my apes. I love them.
Right. Like, tell me some about all the different NFTs you have. Like, I haven't really dipped a toe in this. I do own some NFT, but I created them.
Okay. All right. You
they're
minted
this
your own. Yeah.
they're the tokens I made on the Solana blockchain, but I don't have any of the real ones, the good ones. So what are you excited about? Like, which ones do you have?
Okay. All right. So the art that I'm most into is this collection called Bored Ape Yacht Club. And it's just this collection of chimpanzees rendered artistically with like accessories like 3D glasses or like wearing a beanie, or mine has DMT fur, so the eye of provenance is basically stitched all over his skin, so he's got a third eye.
Right. I was wondering about that. Like, what's the story there? On Did you commission that? Like, is that custom or?
You know what, I saw a bunch of like interesting people on Twitter change their avatar to these apes, and I was like, okay, you know what, let me just follow the herd here and go get one. And I was just browsing the market. I found one that I liked, It was already minted, but it was on the market, and I was like, oh shucks, you know what? I'll just buy it. And I don't know. I think I got lucky on this one, got in at the right time, because then the art collective and design, like coding development team that built it, then what they did is they issued a dog, Bored Ape Kennel Club. So like an randomly generated, cool looking, artsy dog to every ape owner, and then they earn money on every transaction, because these NFTs are sold commonly on this marketplace called OpenSea, which is basically eBay for art and NFTs. And a feature of OpenSea is that the actual original creator can receive a royalty on all sales. So they ended up donating like $250,000 to wildlife rescue based on these art projects, and it's been kind of fun. I mean, like, on the one hand, yes, getting airdropped like 6 ETH or like $12,000 is like, I mean, it's like hitting the jackpot for me. But although I don't know, I like the art too, and I'm just going nuts with it. I had some T-shirts printed. I went to frameiteasy.com. I'm getting a poster for my wall. I like the art. So then I have some other. There's this thing called Punks Comic. So you've probably heard of CryptoPunks. They're kind of one. There was sort of like the first NFTs to really like make the news, because they were being sold for like 50,000, 500,000, lots of money. And anyway, so
Yeah,
this
and they just like I've seen a lot of those avatars around.
Jay-Z, the rapper, his Twitter icon is a CryptoPunk. So there's actually a knockoff project called Solana Punks
Yeah,
that
Soul Punks. I've seen
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any Soul Punks?
I do not like I
I'll
said, I
give
don't
you a
have
Soul
any
Punk.
NFT yet.
If you want a Soul Punk, I'll give you one.
Oh, what? You'll just give it to me? That's awesome, man.
Oh yeah. Oh, my pleasure. I like I went kind of like full on addict with the minting, and I have too many soul punks for my own good. So I've been hoarding. But yeah, I'm happy to give you one. And anyway, so there's this thing called Punk's Comic, where it's like a good comic book artist. I think he worked for Marvel, has launched this comic series with these 16 CryptoPunks as characters. And
Nice.
they minted 10,000 NFTs for Comic One, and everyone who bought the NFT has the option to get the comic, so they can use their NFT and say, okay, I own the NFT, so please mail me a comic. Or they can stake it and receive Punks tokens. And there's actually the 16 Punks that are featured in the comic are owned by this comic book producer. They're going to sell them at some point and share the profits with all token holders. So it's a little bit of like pyramid scheme meets genuinely creative art experience meets like crossover marketing, with issue number 2 of the Punks comic is going to feature some of the Bored Apes. I think it's very much like rap and hip hop in the sense that like a lot of rappers just rap about being good rappers and how much money they have and their lifestyle, and ironically it's that song that enables them to achieve the lifestyle, and but they can like also like get on songs with each other and use that to promote one another. And we see something similar happening in the NFT space, but I'm not like culturally clued in enough to like state anything important here. But it's just what I've been geeking out on recently. It's been my hobby.
Yeah, that's fun. So far, I've been looking at the space, just kind of watching with interest, because at least from a purely financial perspective, I think that my opinion has been I'm totally open to investing in NFTs with the expectation of a return once the NFT artists are dead, right?
Okay.
It's like kind of with regular art, that's one of the guiding principles that collectors use, is that you don't know how many works that artist is going to make over their whole lifetime. And so one of the best ways to kind of ensure that your product thing that you buy, your piece of art, is scarce is, of course, if that artist is dead and can't make anymore. So that's been one of the things I've been thinking about NFTs. But I got to say, by the day, they just get more and more tempting. Like there's some cool stuff out there. Have you seen that crypto kickers?
I have. And my philosophy with NFTs is the same as my philosophy on art, which is that you should buy it if you love it, not because you think it's a good investment necessarily. Now, I'm totally hypocritical because I minted a bunch of soul punks in like a fervor, but that's we can talk. We don't have to talk about that. But they're actually going to launch their NFT marketplace like tomorrow, I think. I'm in the Discord. It's been like kind of interesting to see how popular Discord is in the Solana community.
Like, is it like you mean it's a Solana specific one, like Solana specific NFT marketplace?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a good opportunity to segue. So we haven't kind of introduced Solana yet. I'm not sure if everyone listening will know what that is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Solana is and why you're excited about it? You know, you and I have talked about it. We're both pretty excited, and yeah, take it away.
Sure. So Solana is a smart contract blockchain technology similar to Ethereum, but designed for scalability from the ground up. So it's a pretty new project. It was launched in 2020, I think, and it just sort of had that perfect blend of like great technical leadership and spiritual backing of some of the being kind of like flip with this prophets of the crypto community.
The Moguls,
There you go.
SBF.
Alameda Research, Alameda Capital has been a big backer of them. And so they've done something really special, the Solana Foundation team, in that they are really on the ball with their developer relations. They are like super accessible. I messaged them and I was able to get a read on access key to their internal Google BigQuery instance, and it seems like they're always on Twitter, like asking for people who want to take on certain work and receive grants, and they seem to bet on the right people, and they're just like they seem very competent, and like a lot of interesting people are excited about it, and it's kind of the social proof thing. On the one hand, it's like you got this social proof, so what does it mean? But on the other hand, it's like this critical mass of like developers needed to make a platform. What is a platform? A platform is a platform when the people building applications on the platform are doing more business than the platform itself, right? So we've seen the launch of like some interesting tokens on Solana. You mentioned Cope earlier. I think maybe that was just in our private conversation, but we've seen, they've done some amazing work to bridge Ethereum tokens and bring them onto the Solana blockchain. So that's been really interesting. Now, I have a pretty unpopular philosophy about Solana tokens, in that I think that most of them are overhyped shitcoins. Now, why do I say that? If you look at the market capitalization of some of these projects, like the number of tokens in existence times the price per token, it's just like absurd. Like there are these jokes of projects that are worth $300 million. And like, I mean, is it worth $300 million? No, because it's like not super liquid, right? So if you have a big position you want to dump, you'll like change the price dramatically. But
Right, like those market cap metrics are kind of meaningless because it's basically just like, oh, take the last price that it traded at and multiply it by the supply. Like if you want to get liquid on a huge thing, you're gonna just tank the price. So you can't really say market cap reflects much until at least you get to like a large stage. But no, I'm inclined to agree with you, and it's just one of those things where it's kind of like everyone has to have a token. Like people just want to have a token even if you don't need one. Like they just want to have a token. They make a token.
Right, and there's a lot of questionable tokenomics in the space. Everyone has their theory for why their token is going to be valuable, and a lot of it seems like a solution in need of a problem. But in spite of all that, we have seen that smart contracts are a real innovation with decentralized finance. We've seen that this concept of collateralized decentralized loans, putting up money and then instantly getting money, and without needing anyone's approval, no judgment on what you look like, if you're wearing the right suit and tie, or what your credit history is. If you put the asset up, you can take a loan out, and that collateralized lending is just an awesome innovation. And
Well, just DeFi in general, right? Like I find it really appealing because if I want to swap tokens around, like I don't have to have some central exchange that, I mean, look what happened with Mt. Gox, like they exit scammed. And so DeFi just completely decouples it all there. And also, if I want to get COPE, for instance, I don't have to sign up for some company and just some random exchange and send your stuff over there. And it all just feels kind of sketchy. I mean, DeFi has its own issues too, but I like that it is that kind of the code is the law model, at least within a small sphere, and you can swap the little things around, and it's decentralized. I mean, it's programs running in a decentralized way. I really think, especially with things like social media, that's all going to get part of that big boom. Is that I think people are fed up with centralized systems. They're fed up with this idea that Twitter at any time they just pull the plug. If you want to build an API on top of Twitter, or if you want to build on the Twitter API, like you're at Twitter's mercy. Like they just could just say, you know what, someday no API access, and like your cool innovative startup is gone.
And yep. I was an early user of the Twitter API, and I got plug pulled on me. That was definitely a disappointment. And actually, I was like an early Facebook app developer, and then they changed their settings up, and that was a disappointment. And I was going to say the low transaction fees on Solana are like one of the things that make it special. It was designed from the beginning for scalability. So something about Ethereum that makes like DeFi seem prohibitive to the average person is that the transaction fees make it so that you can't actually take advantage of these decentralized finance unless you're moving like tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum, whereas Solana's fees are so de minimis, I could say.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, they're like nothing. And even if Solana went to $1,000 a sol, then they would still be like nothing because you're paying 0.00005 sol with ETH and Bitcoin. Even you pay this flat fee to move the same amount of coins around. So if you're moving $100 worth of Bitcoin, or if you're moving 100 grand worth of Bitcoin around, you're going to pay the same. And so if it's a $30 fee, I mean, that's 30% of your $100, but that's a tiny fraction of your 100 grand. So in Solana, it's almost not noticeable.
Word. I think a question that people are going to have is, how do you get your first Solana?
Well, obviously you sign up for FTX. Like I'm a SBF fanboy.
I appreciate you dropping the knowledge, because Solana isn't on Coinbase. And for a lot of people that they don't feel comfortable with getting their feet wet, you can buy Ethereum on Coinbase and then send it out of Coinbase and to MetaMask or Coinbase Wallet and start messing with the ecosystem. But Solana, I'm glad you mentioned FTX. And if you want to on ramp you can start playing around. Their test net is actually, their dev net is actually a pretty lively environment too. So if you want to just connect to DevNet and airdrop yourself some Sol, if you want to get into the CLI, it's a wondrous place. It's that's part of the magic, right? I feel like there's like a level of transparency by like reading the code, like the code is the contract, and that's like fundamentally part of the cultural DNA.
Yeah. I mean, and crypto in general is that way, and then Solana in particular, I like that it's written in Rust, and so it's kind of given me this opportunity to learn more about Rust, and just kind of, that was one of the things that piqued my interest about it. Is I knew that if it was written in Rust, it would be very highly performant, and also just the DNA of the team. When you look into it, they're a bunch of like ex-telecom people who have all worked together before and basically just know how to make very highly performant distributed systems. So I think it really has a bright future. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because maybe Ethereum can scale, and Ethereum can do really well, and it is the dominant sort of smart contract platform right now. But I don't know, it just has that energy, right? Like, it's something new, it's something big, and it could really go some pretty incredible places.
It's it's like chess, kind of. I think it's like any easy to learn, difficult to master, but like something that's like kind of attractive to smart people. It's kind of like you mentioned getting nerd sniped by it. There's something there. I mean, it's like fascinating, and it's like a combination of like, can I get rich off this? And this is technically interesting. And well, actually, there's a lot of distributed systems, technical stuff happening here, and we're in the early days with like 50,000 transactions per second is like enabled some interesting applications, but when you get to like 100x that, the equivalent of going from 3G to 5G, it's going to open up use cases that are going to blow everyone's mind. It's like trying to estimate the impact of the internet on computing. It's inconceivable. It's just, and I think the problem that the human mind is like not really good at understanding like power laws, right? And like exponential graphs. It's just not intuitive to the human mind. And a lot of like the superficial analysis is like, okay, this project has like Solana has like a market capitalization of like $8 billion right now. How much further up could it go realistically? The most valuable companies today are like at $1 trillion. Could it be worth that? But then you're not really making that comparison. You're not thinking about all the new value that could be created by this technology. And it's not a zero sum game. It really isn't. So I don't know. I'm I see dollar signs. I see fun. I see interesting community of people. I've enjoyed most of my interactions, and it's also like I feel like Ethereum has become mainstream. You'll hear like, I guess this is kind of classist of me, like your doorman or cab driver talking about Ethereum, and like it's like, okay, the cat's out of the bag, right? And but you you want to tell your Miami story?
Yeah, well, I was just sharing with you earlier that I recently visited Miami. I was in a club. We were dancing, just having fun, and there were some people there. I struck up a conversation, and it was the week after all these crypto conferences and stuff. And so they asked me, "Hey, are you a Bitcoin millionaire?" I think they just thought I was just nerdy looking, so I must be like a Bitcoin millionaire. And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not a Bitcoin millionaire. Sadly, I've just been kind of in and out for years." Making a little bit of money, but not much. And I just told them, like, I had a couple drinks in me. I'm this big Solana advocate and enthusiast. And I said, I like Solana. And they had no idea what I was talking about. So I'm yelling Solana in the club at these random people, and they just had no idea. And to me, that's like a bicycle. Like, the cat is not out of the bag yet.
That's
Like,
true.
there's still, yeah.
Yep. Yep. I mean, what can I say except for I agree wholeheartedly. It sounds like it sounds like we're selling a pyramid scheme, and like kind of. I mean, there's
Kind of. But I mean,
kind
to
of, but
me, like, I'm
yeah.
almost like, it's weird because You tend to not think there are real fundamentals in the crypto space the same way you think like, oh, Warren Buffett invests in companies with good fundamentals, right? Bank of America is always going to find a way to make money. And so that's why they're a buy or whatever. For me, that's what appealed to me about Solana is that I've been a crypto skeptic for a really long time. And the two main issues were one, the environmental impact, right? So having all this proof of work going on, Bitcoin and Ethereum both are still tied to proof of work, which means they're tied to climate change. They're using a lot of energy, and that's a quandary for me. I don't really think that's a good use of our limited energy to just keep running hashes over and over and over again, trying to find one with the most zeros in front. And so that was an issue, and Solana solves that nicely with proof of stake and also really low fees. And so you just need a lot less energy to do useful things on it. But then the other big thing was that blockchain, up until I found Solana at least, was just kind of a shitty, slow database. So why, even if you could argue for the merits of a decentralized program, the practical application of Ethereum being limited to 10 transactions a second just makes it, you look at that and say, that's not going to fly. That's not going to be useful. We're going to be stuck with centralized systems because that's not going to work. Whereas Solana, it just represents everything to me that can fix all of that.
It's certainly a technological breakthrough, and it's not mutually exclusive with Bitcoin or Ethereum. And like back in the day, like when I was first getting really into crypto, I always used to tell people, okay, yeah, I love Bitcoin, but it could be like VHS or Betamax. There could be something that comes along later that's like better marketed and ultimately wins. But I don't think that's exactly what's going to happen in crypto. I think there are going to be several chains, and some vying for. Some of them are going to be more dominant than others in terms of money, of market cap, money at stake. But I don't know. I think we're going to have a lot of different blockchains going in parallel, and I don't think my mind is capable of fully modeling what the future is going to look like.
Well, none of us can, right? Like, I mean, think about 20 years in the future, and no one could probably go back to 2000 and say, okay, Amazon and Google and Netflix and Facebook, which wasn't even invented yet, is going to be the big things. And it's just like that in crypto. You can kind of guess, you can try, but I think that at the end of the day, it's a space where if you're going to be involved, you have to be relatively active and probably relatively on your feet because it's just changed so fast. Like, I mean, look at all these things that happen with all these DeFi platforms, right? Like, you don't want to invest in the wrong one because you could just lose all your money in a hack or just tokenomics gone bad, right? The iron and all that stuff that happened where that just went totally to pot.
Oh, so
Um,
there's this project called Sail on the Solana ecosystem, and they're distributing their token, their governance token, to holders of the Sail token, and they're allocating their distribution based on, they're going to give like 10% of the governance token away to people with like between 0 and 100. They're going to give like 12% between like 100 and 1,000, or like something. Do you see what I'm saying? So they're based on how much you're holding in your wallet, they're changing how much they're going to airdrop to you. And I did the math, and I was like, you know what? I'd be a lot better off if I split my 21,000 sale into 210 different wallets of 100 each. And I announced that, like, my like investigation. I made an Excel sheet, and I like queried the Solana blockchain and like figured out like what the distribution of wallets was, and like I announced that to like the Discord channel, like, like, hey everybody, like, look at what I found.
Look at this exploit I found.
Right. And people are like, there are like, I mean, for all the legitimate like developers and like people who are like interested in pushing things forward, there's a lot of people that are just there to, they don't really know what's going on, but they see it as a get rich quick type of deal.
Yeah, I mean that's the side of the space that I don't like. I don't like all the pump and dump and the scammers, but you just kind of got to take it as it comes. I think like it's like with anything. You could say the same thing about startups, right? Like I don't know, like there were many startups that, like, especially in the past kind of decade, were started that it's like, it just seems like a hot air startup that was started that is just meant to get acquired, or like there's nothing really going on there. It's just kind of riding the trend. So, I mean, you take some of the good with the bad, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, also like having mainstream people involved early on is actually a can't potentially good thing if they're using it for its intended purpose. So yeah, I do feel special, you know. It's like my ego or whatever that I'm like one of the few people who's actually using the Solana CLI to do all of my staking, for example. So there's opportunity. If I guess the people listening to this podcast are pretty technical, right? I mean, you're
I think so. And I think it's just other nerds and kind of programmers and stuff. There's one thing I wanted to ask you about, which is like some of this DeFi stuff I still don't understand. So what is farming?
so what you can do is you can create liquidity pool tokens or LP tokens. Like, let's say you're trying to create liquidity for like Solana and ETH, right? So you can fuse, you can say, okay, I have 10 Solana and that's worth about 1 ETH. That math is wrong. Let's say 1 ETH was worth about like what?
It's like $1,900 or something today.
So what is it, like 1900 divided by 30? So like 60. So let's say I have like an ETH token and 60 Solana. I can pool them together and make one Solana ETH token, and I can delegate that control of that to an automated market maker. And that automated market maker is an algorithm that's designed to place buy and sell orders in a way that, one, they're a market maker, so the exchange pays them for making the market, and two, they're guaranteed to make a fixed amount of money. So they they look for, I guess, spreads across different markets, and they say, okay, I'll buy here and I'll sell there, and I'll place my bid and my ask in a way that is guaranteed to make me money. And in this way, they're making money. And the people who are farming, what they're farming is they're capturing that yield, that money that's being made by the automated market maker. So if there's a bot that's making a market, but the bot is running on your tokens, your LP liquidity pool tokens that you created, the profits are distributed to the token holders, and then you can just redeem them at any time and defuse them and get your principal back.
Well, yeah, but I still don't understand the difference between the different things. Like on Radium, for instance, I'm just looking at Radium. That's a trading platform, or a, how do they describe it? A DeFi platform built on top of Serum, which is built on top of Solana. They have pools, liquidity, and farms, and I just don't understand the difference between the different things. Like, it seems like pools, if you provide liquidity in pools, that means basically you buy, let's just pick the first pair here. So we have Sol and USDC, which is like Coinbase's stable coin. So you like the token holder or like the crypto person, you have some Sol and you have some USDC and you put liquidity into the pool, right? And then the automated market maker, if people want to swap between those two, will automatically swap them and you'll get a small fee. And that's where the yield comes from, right? And so then what is a farm?
Sure. Well, there's also another way to make money with these pools, and that a lot of these new coins have decided to, in order to create a market of liquidity for their token, have a program, the smart contract set up to airdrop part of the token supply over like the first year or so on Radium. It's going to airdrop 10% of the token supply to the liquidity pool. So not only are you earning money from fu- the transaction, from providing the liquidity for the transaction, but you're also earning the airdrop incentive.
Okay, and so that's what farming is. Like I'm looking at the farming on Radium, and I just see a bunch of pairs that include only Ray, which is their token. So I guess that means like if you provide liquidity on Radium paired with some other asset, you get an additional bonus on top of the normal liquidity yield.
For their fusion pools, that's when you're getting you're making the money from the liquidity, and then you're also getting the bonus, the airdrop bonus. But well, you asked about farming, and I want to drive this point home with the notion of harvesting, right? So let's say that you have put up some stake, and you've funded the automated market maker, and you've taken your profit. You harvest the yield by withdrawing the profit. It's the industry term. It's harvesting is when you take your profit out of the smart contract, and then you could reinvest it and create a compound interest. And there are some platforms like soulfarm.io, and they actually handle the harvesting for you. So they'll harvest for you every hour or every 2 hours. They've figured out the optimal ratio between fees and compounding, and they charge a very small fee of the excess profit that you make through auto compounding. And it's actually kind of funny, they actually award you tulip tokens as a little cute insider reference to
It's a
tulip mania.
nod to the
Yeah.
tulip bubble, the Dutch tulip bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's a while I was farming step, right? So I put a ton of money into USD coin and step, and I just saw the yield on that. It was like paying out like 600%
Well, I'm
AP.
looking at it right now, actually, Zach. I have it pulled up, and the Step USDC pair on Soul Farm says right now it has a yearly APY of, brace yourself, 1,344%.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So
But
that
you
is,
make that like in step, right?
that's true.
Like, so that's the problem is like you make this like 1,300% yield, but it's on a shit coin. Like you get 1,300% more of a shit coin. Is that accurate?
It's 100% accurate because
I don't
when
want to say if any step people are listening. I'm sorry if I incorrectly called your coin a shit coin, but I'm just going to assume from the yield, like it's just like it's like a junk bond, right? It has a high yield. It's probably a junk coin, so shit coin.
I mean, when I got into farming step, it was at $1.20. And when I got out of farming step, I it was like at $1.10. And today I think step is at like, how much can you buy a step token for?
It says right now on Coin Market Cap it says 27 cents.
27 cents.
Yeah. So you make you make your 1,300%, but you get cut in 75%.
Yeah. So it's like, and then you also have to think like, wait, is the step token even worth 25 cents? Does this seem like a rational? Right. So I looked into this, and and we could, I don't know, but like you can short step on FTX with perpetuals. So if you wanna, if you wanna hedge yourself or hedge your bets, just it's one whale could come along though and really mess with the price. These are, if you look at the trading volume on some of these shit coins, it's like some of them trade less than $1 million a day, and yet you have billionaires like Alameda Capital that could just. I don't think they do any market manipulation, but like for every one of them, there's some shady underworld people that are just manipulating markets professionally. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, Alameda, they're always just hedging the delta, right? So if they buy Bitcoins somewhere, they got to go hedge that out somewhere else. And so they beta weight everything. So I don't know if they do step, but I just have a feeling that there's a high probability that Alameda basically sells the junkiest things. what they think is. And so, I mean, I don't know anything about EOS, but maybe they sell EOS or something, right? Like, or Ripple, like some coin that they don't really believe in. Yeah, that's one of the possible reasons why Solana is pretty resilient in these little dippies. It's because maybe Alameda is just shorting a shit ton of Bitcoin or something somewhere, and then they buy a bunch of Solana, and they have Solana beta weighted to Bitcoin. So basically, like, oh, you buy an equivalent amount of Solana essentially in to kind of offset the Bitcoin you're selling, then you're delta neutral, right? So theoretically, at least the market movements don't matter. I mean, those folks are really smart. They're capturing that kind of stuff, those ARBs. So anyway, I don't know if that's how it really works, but that's how I figured it worked, at least.
I think you're pretty much right. I think they have a ton of ways to make money because they're just so smart about the markets. They just have better information, and they have liquidity on so many different exchanges that they can actually do arbitrage too. And there's this one Trabuco, is that his name? Guy on Twitter. Uh, he he had this really smart thread about expected value, and he talked about just the value of taking on risk. And he basically did some simulations about, like, if, let's say, you have like a play with like modest expected value but really high variance, right? Like, you have like a 51% chance of doubling your money and a 49% chance of moving in half or something like that. And he modeled it out and looked at the scenarios, and he presented a very convincing analysis that going with high risk, high variance investments is a very smart thing if you're looking to be to maximize your opportunity.
Well, certainly when you're young, right? Like, that's the thing I think a lot of people don't keep in mind is that, you and I, for instance, are both pretty young. I think we're around the same age, and we got 30 years ahead of us, right? So our main advantage is our ability to make money over time. Like, our best earning years are ahead of us. And so why not take risky bets right now? Like, I think most people are probably way too conservative. I mean, if you look at crypto, one way of thinking about it is the worst that will happen is you'll lose all your money, but the upside is unlimited. Like, the potential upside. And so I think that's what humans are not good about reasoning about that. We're loss averse by nature.
Can I just take a minute to pat ourselves on the back and
Absolutely.
that we're everyone in this room, so to speak, is in a position where if you wanted to, you could work hard for 10 years, maybe 15 years and retire, right? So we potentially have like 2 or 3 careers ahead of us in the sense of how many chances do we have? Assuming, I mean, not even factoring in the idea that our market value will increase with even more experience, right? So
Exactly. Well, we got lucky, right? Mostly. I mean, we're nerds that have a skill set that's highly in demand. And so we were kind of like right place at the right time, right technology. Like, I just happened to be lucky because I love Linux and that kind of thing. And so that ended up landing me like at Docker and learning Go and all these other things. And that just happened to align with skills. But that's all happenstance. Like, I almost was like trying to be a musician. Much
yeah.
less lucrative career.
Uh, well, right. And the expected value on, I think, a musical career is probably pretty low. But I think there's a pun to be made about scales, but I don't have it in me.
Ooh, I might have to chew on that one for a while. I didn't see the connection there, but yeah. Well, thank you very much, Zach, for coming on, and I'm really excited to get this Coffee Moguls out there.
Thank you so much for having me.